Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Code Untapped Tech Talk. Hey, so you've got myself, Ez, and we have Jay. How are you doing, Jason?
I'm good, Ez, I'm good. So what are we going to get into this week then, Ez?
Well, we're getting to a topic that a lot of technologists, CTOs and CEOs get really, bit of a twist about. Should they do it? Should they not? What are the advantages, what are the disadvantages? And that is, should you offshore your tech team, right? Now, I've worked with offshore companies. I've had to offshore elements of my team as well. Jay, I know you've worked with offshore developers too, in multiple incarnations and iterations. So I don't think this should be a question. For me, it's not a question of, is it good or bad to offshore your tech team? Personally, I think it depends on the circumstance of you, your team, your product, situation, etc., etc. What do you think?
Definitely, and understanding where they fit into the role of the product, the product development. Yeah, because a lot of people just think, oh, I'm just going to get an offshore team, and they're going to knock it out for me, blah blah blah. Yeah. And because it's cheap, I can get it done really, really cheap. And actually, what are they going to get done really cheap? What are they going to do for you? Are they going to design the entire app for you, every single user journey for you, and then build the code, and then deploy the code, and then manage that code for you? What is it that they're going to do for you? So I think I think way before you even think about, because I've had people come to me and said, you know what, Jay, I want to build this product, and these guys in India, they can knock it out for me for like $5,000. I goes, what are they going to knock out for you for $5,000? What is it that they can do for $5,000? Yeah, and then you drill down a little bit further, and sometimes it's like, well, what are you actually going to build? Yeah, what does your first screen even look like? Do you know? And so it's just like anything. It's just like software. It's a product. It's a service. It has to do something. Yeah, it has to add some value. So before you can even embark on talking about what contractors you're going to hire, whether they be onshore or offshore or nearshore or whatever, you need to have a firm grasp of what you're going to build, and how that thing is going to look and how it's going to work. You need 100%. It's almost like, and it's interesting because there's this, everybody wants to go, but it's agile, Jay, it's agile. But agile has to start somewhere. You have to start with you have to start with something that you're going to build. And what is that minimum viable product? You have to define that minimum viable product first, before you can start any development process. And that falls more in line with the traditional engineering discipline of, actually, I'm going to build a house, for instance. So how big is the house? What is the requirement of the house? How many people is it? How many toilets am I going to have? Because that defines what materials we need. How many people it will take to build. Then you can start to put a budget around it, and you have to do the same type of thing in software as well. So you say, actually, what am I trying to build? Is it a finance app? Is it a health app? Is it a this app? Is it a that app? So what kind of services will that platform use? Will it use a payment? If it's a financial app, will it use a payment service? Which type of payment service will it use? And you think about all of these elements, and then once you have a clear idea of all of the elements or the components or the features that you want to build, then you can start reaching. And before you even do that as well, you've got to have an idea, and that idea has to be has to be tested. You have to actually test it with the person who's going to use that product or service. So you have to go to them, do you want this service? And if I want that service, how do I want to consume that service as well? So there's, way before you even talk about teams and stuff like that, there's a lot of initial work that you need to do to work out what you're going to build, why you're going to build it, and what you need for that to provide that service end to end. And that has to be defined, well defined. Yeah, and then design. It has to be designed as well, and then you can go and work out, you know, where your team's going to be and start costing that side of things. So I know I've rambled a bit there.
No, mate. That's that's gold. Everything you just said there, right? Because I think a lot of people, when they look at the offshoring, they do exactly what you said. They say, "Oh, you know, it'll be cheaper. We'll get X, Y, Z." And actually, often it rarely is cheaper. A lot of, especially Eastern European developers, are pretty much the same price or more than what you would pay
because
for
they're good.
Because they're really good. They're really good. Absolutely. Secondly, once you factor in, you know, oh, well, we haven't done the design, so we need a designer. All right, so now you need a designer. We haven't got anyone on the team who can manage the project. Okay, so now you need a project manager. But we're doing Scrum. Oh, so now you need a Scrum master. We don't have an architect because we don't have anyone who understands. Well, now you need that on the team as well. And now it's going to take, you know, we said 3 months. It's actually 6 months work, and what you've got doesn't actually do what you need it to do. So we got it wrong. So we got to do it all over again, right? So once you get to there, you don't even have the right product. You don't have what you wanted. It's cost you a fortune, and even worse, it's cost you time, right? And that's the big thing. Now, this isn't the trajectory for every offshore project. This isn't me or you, Jay, saying never offshore. This is what can happen if you make these basic assumptions from day one, which is I can just get an offshore team to build my system for me, right? I don't need to worry about technology because I've got an offshore team. You still need, and I think this is the thing that most people forget, even if you offshore, you still need someone on your team who knows technology, who can manage that project and do all the work needed to be ready to work with that team. Because you've got to behave as if they're an internal team, right?
For sure.
Yeah. You'd still have your technologist, your CTO, your CIO. It's just the bulk of the work is going to be done somewhere else. It's not going to be done within you. And you can potentially scale that up and scale that down in terms of resource. But you still need someone who understands. And what happens when you need to bring that IP in-house, right? You get an investor and they say to you, okay, so who owns the system? Who owns the software? Well, we do. We own all the IP. You go, great. Where's all the know-how? Where's all the knowledge? Who knows how to build it? Well, that's all in the offshore team. So what happens if, are these people contracted to you? Well, yeah. So what happens if they quit? You're now completely beholden on that organization to train the right people up to keep that knowledge within your business sphere, as it were. It's not within the business. So I think it's really important that people recognize that even if you offshore, you still need some senior technology leadership within your team.
For sure. Yeah, it doesn't go away. It doesn't, an offshore team, as you're 100% right, an offshore team doesn't negate the technology know-how close to the business. You still need that technology know-how close to the business. And that knowledge transfer, as you know, we've been associated with startups that have been in that position where they've they've offshored their work, and they can't exit out of those offshore agreements.
That's the other thing. Yeah, exactly.
And transitioning away from, say, offshore to nearshore or offshore to onshore, it takes considerable time. Knowledge transfer. There is the knowledge transfer. And there is also contractual obligations as well. There's all sorts of complexities around doing it. So it works for some, it doesn't work for others. But it's something that you should consider, definitely.
I think where it can be really effective, two core areas. One, you're an established business, you need some scale-up resource. You've got a part of the business that you just don't have the skill set in, and you need it pretty quickly, right? And you can then go to an offshore team, they work with your technology group, and they go, right, we'll tell you what, we can bring this particular skill set on board, we can do the work, sign you over the IP, and whilst we're doing this, it gives you the time to recruit the right people to take this off us once we're done.
Or even focus on something else completely different.
Exactly. So in that kind of squad-based, almost like A-team squad-based approach, that works quite well.
And I think I want to add something to that, Ed. I think if the requirement also is well defined, yeah, so you know exactly 100%. What you want to build, yeah, and so the remit, there is no scope creep. It's exactly this is what we want you to build, and this is how it should look, and it's well understood. Then I think you're 100%. It works really well.
And actually, that scope creep problem is an issue because this is where there can become real friction between the business and the tech team. When you've got an offshore team, your business users or your salespeople, whatever, coming back and saying, look, we need XYZ feature, and they can't speak directly to the developers about it, right? And that's not always a good thing that they can, but there needs to be that belief that the tech team are listening, right? And then we can bring in these new features, we can talk about it, we can get it looked at. But when the team's way over somewhere else, you get this real sense of friction in the organization that starts to build. That belief that the tech team aren't available, they don't listen, we don't know them, etc., etc. Even if that's completely not true, right? That still brings up a lot of problems. But the other example where I think offshore can be really positive is actually in early stage startups where you might not have a technical co-founder. You just need to get a prototype built, right?
Yes.
Some kind of simple prototype, just so that you've got an idea or something that you can show to people. Look, this is what I was talking about, right? Here's the basics of it. This is where people make a mistake. They go, instead of getting a prototype built, they get a full version 1 of the app from their offshore team. And now you've got all sorts of other issues that you've got to worry about.
Yeah, you have.
But if you just get that prototype put together, right? And then you can start to shop that around, show that around. Maybe you've even got a couple of really, really basic features in there. But then you use that to recruit and build your actual technology team, and then you replace the offshore team.
And like you said, that prototype can get you traction. That prototype can get you funding to build the proper product. Yeah, which then actually you will need to have that technical oversight near to the business to really make sure that you get the best out of an offshore team if you wanted to use an offshore team to build the next version.
Absolutely. And I, as I said, I still believe you want that technologist at a minimum, even if it's a project manager, but at a minimum, someone on your team who manages that process. And as you know, we're Code Untapped. We like to see an actual core technologist in the business. It's just how we like to do things.
Yeah, it's for us. We believe it's fundamental. Yeah, because if it's a technology business, you need to have somebody who really understands what can be done in that space that you're in with the tech that's being used. Yeah,
100%. So, it's interesting. We'll touch on a couple of things. Some of the challenges, some of the is it for everyone? Does it really save you money? But the benefits. There are benefits. We talked about some of the models that can work. And I do think there are some benefits. I mean, when we built Neighbor, we used an offshore team called SparkyBit, and they were amazing. They really were. And I'm still good friends with their founder today. And there were challenges. There were challenges, especially with actually trying to integrate the teams and bringing knowledge on, because we didn't abandon them. We kept them the whole time, and we tried to have like a dual team structure, which in all honesty doesn't really work, right? I don't think it works particularly well. But having someone with that level of skill set and knowledge who was available, who was able to build a team, scale it up, scale it down alongside us, whilst I was the CTO of the organization, so I had that technology knowledge and able to work alongside these guys. And they built off of my prototype to actually get us to a version 1, as it were. It was really, really helpful. And, so I absolutely, I'm not sat here saying don't ever offshore. I just want to be really clear about that. I absolutely think there are benefits to doing it. I think there's a time and a place, and there are methodologies that work. But one thing I will say is if you're setting out to offshore because you think it's going to be cheaper, you're going to be disappointed. Right?
Yeah,
because if it is cheaper, you probably got what you paid for. And if you got what you paid for, it probably wasn't cheaper. So really, it's a strategic decision. Do you want to go offshore? Do you want to go onshore? And I think ultimately the number one reason to go offshore is access to talent and speed to
Yeah.
spin up the team. That's your reason for doing it.
And I think and especially if we're looking at, you look at India, yeah, and people don't understand that, India's a country with, 1.2 billion people. Yeah. So they have just a crazy amount of technologists. So they just have a bigger pool of technologists. It's just a numbers game. They have a bigger pool of technologists that they can use. So you can, that's what that is just a massive benefit if you're trying to, because sometimes you just can't source the people with the right skills to build you the product. And it might not even be a money situation. You just can't source them because those people are, working on other projects. So this is where, offshoring really can benefit. Yeah. And, India, Eastern European, and I've been, and Africa seems to be like a new marketplace.
I think Africa is going to be the future of offshoring.
Exactly. That's really becoming a thing now, and I'm starting to get in my inbox. I'm starting to get some, are you willing to take on, teams working? Have you thought about taking on, offshoring teams in Africa? Obviously, China was coming. Obviously, there's offshoring going on in China. That came off the back of the fact that Indian offshoring was getting really expensive, and people were looking at other places. And then, but now, Africa's has come on a long way. And especially if you look at places like Nigeria, where they're extremely hot and extremely experienced in the fintech space. Yeah. Yeah. And mobile fintech space. They're extremely
and crypto and blockchain
and crypto as well.
And you're getting a lot, of machine learning.
Really hot. Yeah.
Machine learning.
So in West Africa in particular, they're really hot in fintech. Yeah. And so if you need that kind of experience, that's definitely an offshoring market to be looking at as well. Yeah.
Well, I also think that what's happening there is you've got Facebook, you've got Google, you've got all these companies building out large training facilities. You've got Andela providing coaching skill sets or code skill sets to people out in Africa. And then you've got this ever-increasing wave of venture capital cash coming into tech companies in Africa. We've posted about a whole bunch of them. So what it's doing, it's really kickstarting that ecosystem. And I think for countries like ours, as one of the big things that's come out of the pandemic has been remote working, right? It's always been possible, but people didn't really believe it was. And increasingly everyone's seeing that, well, it is possible. Or if remote working is possible, does it really matter where people are? Well, it can do, because there's one thing that is always a problem, even with remote: time zones, right? Yes. You still want people to work in the same time zone as you, because there's a time when you need to do work and you need to collaborate with people. Sometimes you can have more of a follow the sun model, and that works really well, especially with support or continuous development that you might require. But often you want to be in the same time zone. And guess what? There's a whole bunch of countries in Africa that are on the same time zone as the UK. Some people might not even realize that, but Nigeria is on the same time zone as England.
And Ghana as well, I think.
And Ghana as well. They're all English speaking, super, very well educated. And we're getting ever more technologists coming out of these countries. So I absolutely believe that you're going to see a new wave of, and I've believed it for some time, but you're going to see a new wave of offshore companies coming out of these countries.
And actually, from a distance perspective as well, it's like what, a 5-hour flight to something like Ghana, to a place like Ghana or something like that. So actually, it's not as, if you do have to go out and meet the team, which we've had to do that as in our jobs. I've had to do that in some of my previous jobs where I've had to go out and spend some time with the offshore team if there's a big project and we need to take them through it and stuff like that and work it out, and even that, doing the 13-hour flight to India, it's much easier to just, 5-hour flight to, a place like, Ghana or Nigeria, and you're in the same time zone. 100%. So you're not spaced out when you land and stuff like that. So, you'll have to adjust. So yeah, definitely.
So to summarize, I think we can summarize this fairly comfortably. Is offshoring a bad idea? No, right? It depends on what you need to do. if you do it, what do you need to think about? Well, make sure you've got a technologist on the team. Make sure you know what it is you actually want, and make sure you're offshoring a project or a piece of work that is stage appropriate, right? So it might be prototyping, it might be a specific feature or tool set that you don't have the skill set or the capacity to build. Yeah. And, you know, don't do this because you think it's going to save you money. Do it because it gives you access to talent. I think that's the key thing. And finally, keep an eye out for the African countries as well, because they're up and coming in this space. I think, Jay, I don't know, do you think I missed anything, or is that?
I think you covered it always. You covered it all.
Right, fantastic. So this has been a really interesting one. We'd love to hear from people what they think about offshoring and, you know, any of their experiences. But in the meantime, I think that's it for us, right? So that's it from me. Any final words from you, Jay?
Just carry on coding, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Fantastic. Take it easy, everybody.